We know divorce is never the goal, and yet when it becomes part of your story or that of someone you love, how you move through it can make all the difference. In part 2 with Joe Dillon, we explore how to navigate divorce with emotional steadiness, protect your mental health, and find fulfillment and confidence again on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm Kendra Nielsen, wife, mom, and licensed therapist. Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but you're still exhausted and empty? Did you think life, marriage, and parenting would be simpler and more rewarding? Sometimes you just want to crawl back into bed and lose yourself in screen time and chocolate, rather than face that personal or family stress. You are not alone. This podcast helps you break free of the rat race and build a richer, more meaningful life, flourishing incrementally and realistically, improving your mental health and wellness, and living with deeper purpose beyond the mundane, no matter where you are in life's journey. I do have some questions about another part of it too. I'm thinking about a client recently that he went to a mediator, and I think it was a pretty good experience. But as he was talking, I was thinking, is that really a fair amount? Like it's just more of a people pleaser, just more passive. His wife was like, I want this and this. And as he was sharing things, I'm like, that seems like he's giving a lot more than is fair
Right.
that he might regret in 5 years. And because they both were like, yeah, we're fine with it, then they went with it. But would a mediator be like, this might be something that is not sustainable or is not actually wise, and let me tell you why, or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. A little bit about me. I actually have an MBA in finance. That's pretty unusual in the mediation space. As you would imagine, most people in my space are either lawyers or mental health professionals. It's very rare that someone is not one of the two of those. We are very analytical and process oriented. It's not to sound like, oh, you're just churning people through a divorce. Absolutely not. We strongly believe, and 18 years of experience has shown me, that when you let people run the process, that's when the car gets driven through the guardrail and over the cliff. You need to keep people on the road and you need to give them guardrails. So over the years, we've developed our own proprietary processes to keep people moving forward in an organized fashion. Along those lines, there's two parts to our process that I believe are unique in the sense that we first have you do an extensive budgeting process. In that budgeting process, we'll have you do a joint budget, which your marital spending look like, as well as two apart budgets of what your lives will look like apart. The first part of that exercise says, this is what we used to spend. Was it sustainable? Usually it isn't. And then the next part of the exercise says, this is what I need to live on my own. So I better make sure that when I walk away from this process here, from this divorce, that I've got at least X. The next is a balance sheet process, which puts all of your assets and liabilities in one place. A lot of people, they come and go, we have it all figured out. I'm going to buy out the house. Okay, that's great. Do you guys have a car? Sure, of course we have 2 cars. Do you have 401ks, IRAs, 401ks? What are you going to do with those? And that's silence. They have to look at the whole, and you have to look at not only where am I going to live, but what am I going to drive? Even if you're 35 years old, I'm going to retire eventually. What does your retirement plan look like? As a numbers person, I tend to push back a lot because my settlements are reality based. They're based in numbers. They're based in actual, what is it going to cost you to live? When do you want to retire? What is your goal for retirement? How much do you think you'll need when you get to retirement? As a financial professional, kind of tell you that. And that's where we have conversations and I push back and say, look, one of the things I say to clients, again, part of trying to be the levity, I'm not a potted plant. I'm not just sitting in the corner looking all, pretty and just observing the proceedings. I am an active participant. And if I see something that looks a little unusual, I'm going to push back. Now, I will be very honest with you and your listeners. That's unusual for mediators. Most mediators are what we call facilitated. Facilitated is, what would you like? How does that make you feel? Are you okay with that? I fall into the camp of directive mediators, which is, let's take a look at that. Let's reality check that. Let's stress test that. Are you sure? Okay, let me ask you a question. Your budget says you need $8,000 a month to live, yet you only make $3,000 a month and you don't want alimony. Help me understand how's this going to work. And then when you look at it not in a threatening way, right? You're not trying to say, it's dumb. You're saying to them, listen, you just reported, right? Here's your part budget. This is perfectly reasonable. Here's your apartment, your groceries, your car payment, everything's on here. You told me you need $8,000 a month. You bring home about 3,500, 4,000, whatever it is. How are you going to make up that shortfall? And that's usually when the aha moment happens, where folks are like, maybe I do need some support. And then you can look at the other person who is bringing home $18,000 a month and budget is also 8,000 and look at them and say, you look like you're more than okay. Can you understand why your soon to be ex needs alimony? And if they say no, that's when I usually push back and go, really? Like, let's look at these budgets. But you see, the point is you've got something that you're reacting to. You've got reality. A lot of times, Andrew, what happens is people say, I want this. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying you need it. It's warranted. It's required. If you have 2 kids, you need a 3-bedroom apartment or a 3-bedroom townhouse. Where are your children going to sleep if you don't make ends meet? And that's how a good mediator, in my opinion, is going to push back and show people through the process, through the numbers, what the reality of their situation is, so that it's not I just give up or the other person feels like they got cajoled into something. It's that, look, we're all looking at the same information. Tell me if you see something different that I don't see. And that's what really also, I believe, helps our clients get to those agreements, because they're not just whimsical. They're not just numbers pulled out of thin air. They're based on reality.
So then with that, a couple of things. You're talking about the budget and everything you have them. I'm thinking about all these clients right now and in the past that I've worked with, and how I imagine that a lot of them would lie, especially if they are self-employed, like under reporting things so that it can work in their favor. How do you navigate that?
So I'm a business owner too. And that's what's really fun. When I ask people questions, I ask them for their tax returns. I ask them for their K-1s. I'm LLC, so that's what I get. I ask them for their profit and loss statements to see their books. And as a self-employed person, I know where to play the shell game and what to put the ball under the cup and move it around. And I look at it and I'll bring it back into reality and I'll open up the books. And usually, invariably, in my experience, one person is the numbers person in a relationship. Typically, one person's paying the bills. Ironically, despite having an MBA in finance, it's my wife at our house who pays our mortgage and pays our bills. So if you said to me, Joe, how much is your mortgage right now? I'm going to have to ask Cheryl on that. Sorry. But in that case, what I do is I open up the books and I go through it and I look at the cash flow and I look at the process and I start asking questions. And you can tell right away with folks, they're stammering and they're aiming and hawing because you put them in a corner. It's not like I'm trying to be a jerk again. I just love to ask the question, help me understand. It's a non-threatening way to get someone to open up, and you look at it and say, okay, help me understand. You had $700,000 in gross sales last year, but you're showing a $50,000 negative net loss.
Right.
But you drive a Cadillac Escalade, you live in a $2 million house, and you went on vacation 4 times last year. Help me understand this. Then you get the hemming and the hawing. Look, confidential process. I'm not the IRS. I'm not here to report you, but we need to talk about this in the divorce context, in the mediation context. And I think there's a little bit of relief because mediation is a confidential process. And I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to bust you. I'm simply saying, look, you have a business that's a local chain of whatever shoe stores. Yet your travel expenses were $83,000 last year. Where did you go? Because you wrote off all your vacations through your company. That's where you went. And that's why your net profit is negative. Those are the things we help people explore, given my background in finance, so that, as you said, we get truly down to the cash flow and what we call the perquisites, right? So that's where that word perks, when you get perks, comes from. The real word is perquisites, meaning my company pays my cell phone. Like, for example, at Equitable Mediation, of course, my company pays my cell phone because, sure, my friends call me on it too. So do clients. My car, if I have to drive to a conference or a meeting, my company pays for that as well. If I didn't have a company, I'd be making my own car payment out of my paycheck. So all of those things we go through and we bring them back into the cash flow conversation, which helps people understand what money is really available for things like alimony and child support.
Since this whole process is new and I know that clients are thinking similar things, this is really helpful for me, even talking to clients and counseling them on different things. But how long do people potentially pay alimony? Is that something you scale back on over time? And also, do you meet with people together or separately or both? Tell me a little bit about those things.
Yeah. So let's answer the second question first because it's the easier one. When it comes to mediation, there are different styles of mediation, and I always engage one on two all the time. I find that it builds trust. We're all in the same space. If there's a disagreement, we can resolve it immediately. Not to mention, I don't want to be in a position where one spouse says to me, look, I want to tell you something, but you have to promise not to tell my spouse. Wow, that's really tenuous because in a divorce situation where two people are sharing that kind of information and I'm in the middle of the flow trying to get them to resolve issues, it's very hard to remember, okay, spouse A told me this, spouse B told me this, but can't bring up either of those things. Oh no, that's a challenge. Now, where we're different, the way we mediate, my partner, as you probably figured out, we share the same last name, my partner, Cheryl, she's our divorce coach. So we provide a sort of 1-2 process. When you work with me, it's always 1-on-2. I'm the mediator. I help with all the tactical, the financial, all that stuff. Cheryl, on the other hand, is always 1-on-1. She's never in mediation. She's only there to provide emotional support. She's not there to talk about the tactical or the financial or the mediated stuff. So that gives our clients the unique ability to work with me 1-on-2. If they hit something in session they're frustrated with about their spouse, how do they work through it? They work with Cheryl 1-on-1. She helps them manage those emotions, the button pushing, helping them think about their negotiation strategy, moving them forward. And it gives them that sort of release valve so that when they come back in a session with me, they're ready to move forward. It's a very unique approach that we have in combining both mediation and coaching because we recognize, look, you can talk numbers all day, but it's emotions that drive divorce. And if you can't get past your emotions, we're not going to really be able to mediate at all. We'll just basically be going in the spiral of over and airing past grievances and being angry that it's over when we really need to do is move you forward and get you onto the other side to heal. In regards to the alimony question, there's literally no way to answer that because some states have guidelines and some don't. Some states that do have guidelines allow flexibility, some don't. Some that don't have guidelines, there are whispers, unwritten rules, etc. Professionals like me use to help you resolve them, but they vary wildly from state to state. At the end of the day, the duration of alimony is up to the parties. And a lot of it, because alimony is not meant to unjustly enrich one party or penalize the other, it's need-based. It's, do we have a genuine need? And for how long does this person need to transition from married to single? That can vary from couple to couple, situation to situation. Say you were married 10 years, but you got married at 22 and now you're 32. You still have a lot of years ahead. You can still rebuild your career, et cetera, et cetera. Let's say you were married 30 years and now you're 62. That duration looks a lot different, right? Because your primary caregiver, children, homemaker, as perhaps some people might say, and then in that case, alimony looks a lot different, right? So it's really varies a lot from state to state, couple to couple, situation to situation. But typically, if there's one thing I can say to people is in most states, alimony typically does not last longer than the duration of the marriage. So that's not a guarantee, right? I'm not a lawyer. Can't really 100% hang your hat on that because I have had mediated cases where clients have chosen to have the duration of alimony longer than their marriage. That's a choice they made. But as a general rule, alimony typically doesn't last longer than someone's marriage. So that's about the only really guidance I could give your listeners on that.
And is alimony usually just Like, who pays it? Clarify that, if you would.
Higher earning spouse. It's based on needs. So it's meant to aid the lower earning spouse transition from married to single. So if there's an income disparity between the spouses that's significant enough that the lower earning spouse can't make ends meet, can't really survive and thrive, that's where the conversations come in.
Okay. And then what if one is just like refusing to work or just not really being willing to pull their weight? Is that a challenge?
That gets factored in, absolutely, because in situations like that, we use a concept known as imputed income. So, and numbers, guys, so my process is a little different, a little more robust than others. But some cases, if you were, for example, had a very reluctant spouse, you would bring in someone like an employability expert who would say, listen, based on your age, the job market, your skill set, here's what you could earn, here's what you could earn in 3 to 5 years. And those would be numbers we would use to calculate alimony, to have that conversation. In absence of that, what I like to do is go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's a ton of information put out there by the government and say, okay, tell me a bit about your background. What's your education? What's your degree? And what's your training? Where did you work before? What are your skills? What do you like to do? And then we use those mean median wages from the BLS to say, okay, if you went and got a job as dental hygienist, I don't know, 9 months of training, here's your starting salary on average based on where you live. That's what we're going to impute for your income. So when we move forward, you said you want to be a dental hygienist. That's what you'll be quote unquote earning for the purposes of negotiating support. Even though you're not earning it per se, you said that's what you're going to do based on our negotiation. Well, now it's up to you to go out, get that certification and become that hygienist.
Okay. So just a few more questions for clarity. Can you really quantify, and maybe you can't, maybe it's different for every single one, how many sessions, I don't know what you call them, or maybe an average of how many times people come and see you when they're doing mediation, especially compared to an attorney?
Yeah. I'll do the broad timeline first. An attorney-driven divorce is somewhere between 2 and 3 years.
Okay.
And if it goes really well, maybe a year to year and a half, maybe, if it goes well. So you're really looking at that time. Mediation is about 2 to 3 months, and at least the way our process works. So the real simple quantity is 2 to 3 years versus 2 to 3 months. That's a very easy comparison. If mediated divorce, even if you take your time, 4 to 6 months on the outset, if you're going longer than 6 months in mediation, in my experience, that's a challenge. There's a deeper issue that clients aren't able to work through, that they're using it in a more therapeutic way where they're trying to just continue to be engaged with each other rather than resolving issues and moving forward. So we have a framework that says your strategy session should happen by here, your discovery is due by here, your first negotiation session should happen. And it's a calendar, it's dates that we give you this time frame. For us, people with kids, the ones that, the clients that we work with, you're probably looking at 5 2-hour sessions, 4 to 5 2-hour sessions, plus a strategy. So maybe 5 to 6 sessions for people with children. Without kids, maybe 3 to 4. It all just depends on case complexity. We tend to work with a lot of like high net worth folks who have, because we practice California and Washington are the two of the states we practice in. And both of those have very big high tech industries. So those clients that we work with have restricted stock units, stock options, strange compensation. Those folks might go 6 sessions, 7 sessions, but at the end of the day, they're still moving through it in maybe 3 or 4 months in that case. And it's sure going to be the 2 or 3 years down the road, plus the cost, of course, fraction of the cost of the attorney-driven divorce. That's a good rule of thumb, is if you're meeting and you're going through this process after about 3 or 4 months, you should really be wrapping things up. You should be in that framework of 5 sessions, somewhere in there. You start going longer than that, like I said. That's where, as a mediator, it's not like I'm trying to rush people. But when you're in session, it's very important to keep people focused on the reason they're there. And my explanation always is, my background, guys, MBA finance. Nowhere does it say LMFT or Psych D or that's not my wheelhouse and you don't want me as your therapist. I'm woefully underqualified. My job is to be very tactical and help you move forward. I'm a nice guy. I'm not trying to pressure or rush you. but we have a job: parenting plan, child support, alimony, property division. That's our job right now as a mediator. And those should take, as I mentioned, that timeline. If we're starting to talk about other things, that's devolving into therapy. And again, I'm actually probably harming you more than helping you by letting you talk about that, because that can open up hurt feelings and suddenly derail the process.
Okay, that helps break it down a little bit what that entails. Also, I know people are probably wondering, oh, I could really use this, would be really helpful for me. What other states do you cover?
We practice in Illinois and we practice in California and Washington. And part of the reason we do that is those states are very mediation friendly. Now, that doesn't mean that the other states aren't mediation friendly as well. There are other states that are also very supportive of mediation: Ohio, Texas, Florida. But we just chose those because we've made a conscious decision to say, look, we want to make sure we understand how divorce works in those states, like inside and out. And as you would imagine, divorce laws change and statutes change all the time. And we want to make sure that we can stay up on that. So we deep dive into those communities. We have lots of colleagues in those states. We've lived in those places. So those are the reason why, because a lot of times too, divorce is not only a statute issue, a tactical issue, but it's also a local issue. And what I mean by that, for example, is if you have a client in New Jersey who lives in the Princeton, New Jersey area, which is located in the central part of the state, and they work in Manhattan, and they want a 50-50 parenting plan. If you didn't live in New Jersey and know that the train from New York to Princeton to New York is like an hour and 15 minutes, plus they need to transfer to get down to Wall Street, that's another half hour, and they're probably not getting home until 7 o'clock at night, you can't with a straight face say to them, listen, I know you really want a 50-50 plan, but by the time you get the 123 uptown into Penn Station and get the train to Princeton Junction, that's 2 hours, and your kid's daycare closes at 5. That gives you some ability to have those conversations and to reality check what it is they're trying to do too. Because as someone, for example, who lives in California, whenever someone says to us like, hey, you want to meet for dinner at blank, we say to ourselves, we look at the map and we look and go, that's a 2-hour drive, even though it's only 30 miles from here. Because you know what the traffic is. You need to also understand the local issues that people face to help them come to those resolutions. That's also why we limit our practice to people live in those places.
And that makes sense. What about those people that live outside of there, but they want to have a mediator as well? What should they do?
I always say a good place to start is the internet. You can always find organizations. There's like I think it's the Associated of Professional Family Mediators, or mediate.com. These are directories that exist out there for people who can pay to list themselves up there. But invariably, as we've been talking about, divorce touches a lot of people. And even though the divorce rate has on average gone down when it had peaked at about 50%, we're still seeing a lot of divorces for what we call empty nesters, gray divorce. So folks in their 50s and 60s, that divorce rate is very high right now. But as a general rule, it's gone down. Ask your friends, ask your family members. If you know someone who would experience, our best clients are referrals, because the folks who come in and see us, they know our style. Hopefully unbiased information from your friends and family who have used us. So I would even say, talk to your close circle of friends, see if you know if anybody has gotten divorced, if they use the mediator, if they can recommend them, because that certainly is the best way. But in absence of that, directories like mediate.com and places like that are a good start to go, a good place to start. So,
Okay. And just my last question for you, turning it back, because some people might be like, oh, I can somewhat see how this would help. But when it comes to mental health and wellness, when it comes to deepening fulfillment, why do you think this matters? What would you say to listeners?
but that's an easy one, because you really have to ask yourself, if you're in charge of your own happiness and you're in charge of your own life, are you really wanting to put yourself through a process that you know is going to be devastating? If you're going to go through a litigated, knockdown, drag out role, that's going to be years of your life. That's immeasurable damage that I can tell you from experience, people do not recover from. Rather than going through a process that respects people, both parties are treated as equals. The settlement that's reached is It has to be fair by definition to both people and allows you to move forward a lot faster and begin that healing process. Whenever I finish with clients, we always have a closing bit where when everything's done, and I just look at both of them, and we practice remotely, as you would imagine. And I look at them and say, I know this is going to sound strange, but be proud of the work you did. Imagine that you got through the single most difficult negotiation of your life, and you made it through without chaos. Maybe we had a few bumps and we had a few hiccups and there was a couple of raised voices throughout the process. But look what you did. Look what you accomplished. Now, this is the part where you can exhale, because I tell them, I said, the next 12 months are going to be the fallout from this. It's going to be quiet. You're going to be in your head. That's the time where you need to rebuild and repair. So the sooner we can get you to that place, the sooner you can move forward with that process of rebuilding and repairing, and then moving forward with your life and being good co-parents. That's the bottom line, really, just getting to the other side of this so that you can fall apart and then rebuild.
I appreciate that. And there's so much good information here for people that are coming face to face with this. And we know statistically, divorce is obviously very common, something that most of us will face one way or another with somebody we love or in our own lives. So this gives a lot of clarity to what this could look like. And for those that are in those states that you practice, how can they reach you?
Yeah. Our website's the best place. And even if you live in a different state, please come to our website. It's equitablemediation.com, and you'll see we have a learning center, and it's filled with blog articles and podcasts and videos and courses. Our courses on preparing for divorce, how to negotiate a divorce, they're applicable across the United States. We have a financial kit. We have preparing all these things that can really help you when you enter the divorce process. If you're armed with information and knowledge, it's right. The old knowledge is power. That's one thing that I really wanted to emphasize when I saw growing up. My mom had to save her money and the notepad on our kitchen counter where she'd write down all her questions. So when she saved up enough money to buy 1 hour of her lawyer's time, she could run in there and just hammer him with all the questions, get all of her answers. And I watched that happen. We had to space out our appointments to the lawyer. And that was not fun because it obviously dragged the divorce on. So I made a decision. I'm going to start a learning center, and I've been doing this for 17 years. The information's out there. Most of it's free. You can go in there. You can consume information on how does property division work? How does alimony work? How does parenting plan work? All these things are available to you. So go to the website, equitablemediation.com. And if you do live in one of our 6 states, there's a little button up there. Book a consult, free meeting. And you're on the fence right now. If you're not really sure about you want a divorce, you can book a call with Cheryl. That's one-on-one, right? 15-minute exploratory. Is mediation right for me? This is what I'm thinking. If you and your spouse have made the decision to divorce, then you can book a meeting for both of you with me as well. That's a longer meeting, 45 minutes, where we'll see if mediation is a good fit. Don't be afraid to take advantage of the resources that are out there, because it's a scary time. And when you get educated and you get that knowledge and you get empowered, it makes it hopefully a little less scary.
Awesome. We will put all of your links and everything in the show notes if they want to reach out to you. I very much appreciate you coming on, Joe, and breaking this down for us on what it could look like, how it could be more seamless, how it compares to, say, getting an attorney and getting through this challenge in life in a way that is more fulfilling, more peaceful, less chaotic, and just helping us out with that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the conversation.
Even in seasons of heartbreak or big change, new beginnings are possible. If you're rebuilding after loss or reimagining what a healthy life looks like, visit fulfillmenttherapy.org for tools and guidance. Check out Find Your Focus course or Heal Your Home program to bring calm and clarity back to your daily life. And if you'd like to request a topic or join a free coaching call that could become a future podcast episode, email us at hello@fulfillmenttherapy.org. We'd love to hear your story. We'll see you back here next Monday with a new episode. Until then. Hey friends, if you enjoyed this episode, a quick 30-second share can help someone else find support and help this podcast grow. leaving a review on Apple Podcasts boosts visibility and keeps the show alive. Your simple acts make a big difference. I'll see you back here each week for more life-changing episodes.